You know, despite the talk from all the globalists regarding how we're all one human species and there should be no borders and we're all in this together, etc., etc., you can really tell who actually believes that and who doesn't by looking at their coronavirus pandemic response. Which nations are working together with others? Which are simply going it alone? Well, the results might surprise you, or maybe not. Global rush for Trump-backed virus drug sparks India export ban. They're talking about here, I think, hydroxychloroquine, which is a drug that, if taken while you have the coronavirus, seems to at least somewhat reduce the symptoms sometimes. It's certainly not a miracle cure, but as soon as this became known, suddenly India stopped exporting it. That's no big deal, though. Hydroxychloroquine is actually pretty easy to get a hold of. The plants that it comes from can basically be grown anywhere. But as you can see by the article, India banned exports of a malaria drug backed by US President Donald Trump amid a run on supplies globally. India is probably buying time to ensure its local needs are met first. And that actually makes complete sense. It's better to help yourself before you help somebody else, because if you're incapacitated, you can't help anybody else. In the States, people are stealing masks and other medical equipment from hospitals. This was 2 months ago, so who knows if it's still happening now. But additionally, this is also individual people, not the actions of a government. The article doesn't directly confirm this, but the tone of it makes it sound like the people who are stealing from hospitals are actually those doctors and nurses who are working there, probably stocking up on their own personal supply from the hospital closets. Of course, even though the media reported on this at the beginning of March, by the end of March, after Trump had agreed with them that doctors and nurses were in fact stealing PPE from the hospitals, the legacy media of course flip-flops. Trump could help solve the mask problem and said he's making baseless attacks on New York nurses. Baseless? Weren't you guys reporting that this was actually the case? French border guards impound trucks filled with 130,000 face masks bound for Britain for the NHS workers battling coronavirus. After realizing what was on board, border guards in France held the truck there. Macron has promised to requisition face masks for the French crisis. I mean, presumably Britain had fairly purchased those masks. It was their property and the French just took them. It's okay though. According to the Global Times, which is China's English propaganda outlet, China has returned the favor to the EU while American help is absent. And this article is about how awesome the Communist government of China is, sending all these supplies to Europe. Of course, that was basically just a propaganda stunt, because almost all of the actual medical supplies that are manufactured in China, but owned by American and European firms, are no longer leaving China, and those businesses have in fact been nationalized by the Chinese. The world needs masks, China makes them, but has been hoarding them. Yeah, the American medical supply company, 3M, they had millions of masks in China. China's not letting those go. They might send over a couple of pallets of supplies to make themselves look good on the world stage, but they're keeping everything now. Maybe the West should move its manufacturing base out of a country that has no problem with just stealing everything, should the situation require it. Italy, one of the worst hit countries in Europe, has been asking the EU for help, and has received nothing from them. So much for an ever closer union. I guess that's just completely abandoned as soon as a crisis comes along. So as you can see, all of these places that want this globalism, that want money flowing between countries, that want this privileged upper class of people who are predominantly socialist leaning and who can jet set around the world, having no actual ties to any one location, who can fly into a community, destroy it for profit, act like they're still moral because they virtue signal as social justice warriors, and then just fly away, leaving the people there to live in the rubble. All of that nonsense, all of that talk about how we are one human race and how all cultures are equally beautiful and how everyone's way of life is valid, all of that comes crashing down as soon as there's an actual emergency. For those people who have survived solely on ideology and who have never actually experienced any real hardship, their true feelings are laid bare when put under stress. It's a mad scramble, everyone for themselves. But that's not everyone. A lot of people have been reacting completely differently. Here's the story of a small business based out of Liverpool. These two build custom 3D printers and sell them, and they've decided to use their tech to start printing hundreds of face shields for coronavirus clinics. The crew over at the Canadian-based Linus Tech Tips YouTube channel, they've got about a dozen 3D printers, and they made a video series on how they fired up their production to make face masks for local hospitals in Vancouver, and how you could do the same if you also have a 3D printer. This guy mostly talks about movies on his personal Twitter account, but his day job at a factory, they're currently pivoting the factory to solely make surgical masks and other medical garments in short supply. We can make 2 million masks a day. And check this out. Bureaucracy and red tape are making this hard, But if anyone knows of any hospitals or facilities that are in need of the following, please DM me. Surgical masks, face masks, surgical gowns, coveralls, gloves. All phones for the coronavirus hotline are jammed up, as well as all numbers from Governor Cuomo's press conferences. If anyone has any direct contacts on how to best supply our facilities, please let me know. It does not have to be within New York. People keep saying it's the government that has to do something about the crisis. But all of the raw production power that we need, that we have, comes from private industry. And at least in some ways, the government just slows things down. Here's the CEO of Razer, the company that makes computer mice and keyboards and stuff like that. So I haven't had much sleep over the past couple of days to get this initiative up and running, but I'm happy to be able to announce this on behalf of the team here at Razer. With the worsening of the coronavirus situation, health authorities worldwide are facing an extreme shortage of surgical masks used by the frontline healthcare staff in the battle against the virus. Over the past few days, our designers and engineers have been working 24-hour shifts to convert some of our existing manufacturing lines to produce surgical masks so that we can donate them to countries around the world. We intend to donate up to 1 million masks to the health authorities of different countries globally. Elon Musk's Tesla company has also stepped in to make ventilators and N95 face masks. And average everyday people are joining in too. Folding at home is now more powerful than the world's top 7 supercomputers combined. Folding at Home is an application you can download and run on your computer. And what it does is it networks your computer to millions of other computers running the application while you're not using it. Scientists have been using everyone's computers via Folding at Home to study things for years now. But right now, the company running Folding at Home, they've decided to harness everyone's computers to try and map out the protein sequences of the coronavirus. And so even if you can't do anything yourself personally, if you have a computer that you're not using, you can literally just run Folding at Home overnight, and your CPU will automate some of the research that the scientists are requesting. People are volunteering more than their computers. More than 26,000 joined the UK's Land Army to pick fruit and vegetables at farms across Britain as they face a season without a workforce. 750,000 people also volunteered in the UK to help the NHS. 27,000 people signed up as volunteers to assist Canada Health. Even ExxonMobil, not exactly a company I'd put at the top of my list for ethical companies, they've decided to also start making face masks. Trump's enlisted General Electric and Philips to make more ventilators using the Defense Production Act. I'm not fond of the government telling private business what to manufacture, but apparently they're still selling them at profit, so whatever. Basically though, where governments have begun to fail, private citizens and corporations are actually picking up the slack. And it's also not been a complete failure of government either. Pfizer, an American pharmaceutical company, has been collaborating with German private businesses and is now beginning to test a possible coronavirus vaccine in the United States. Trudeau sunk $1.1 billion to fund coronavirus vaccine development in Canada, tapping into both Canada's universities and private medical companies. And we are seeing the results of that effort. McMaster University is developing a home-based coronavirus test. It acts similar to a pregnancy test and would reveal results in 20 minutes. Researchers at the University of Western Ontario are confident that their work on a coronavirus vaccine will soon bear fruit. The Vancouver biotech company Abcelera Biologics has discovered the antibodies for coronavirus treatment. The Quebec-based company Medicago is close to testing their vaccine on humans as well. These are all schools and companies that received those grants from Trudeau's government. And although I don't approve of many of the other things Trudeau has done, this seems to have panned out just fine. There are multiple articles and sources saying that the Americans, Canadians, French, and Germans, both their governments and their private industries, are at least partially collaborating on their vaccine efforts. I haven't seen any evidence that the British are in on it, but if they are, I wouldn't be surprised. If they're not, I wonder what they're waiting for. Because you don't have to be either a complete isolationist or a complete open borders fanatic. There is a middle ground there. There is no reason that like-minded, free, democratic countries can't work together on this problem. And there's also no reason why they shouldn't get their own cases under control before offering help to anyone else. That is how responsible people react in a crisis. They don't leap in foolishly because they might put themselves in harm's way and just create another victim. Adding another body to the pile won't help anyone. But at the same time, once, say, Canada is safe and things are relatively under control, why wouldn't we help others? Why wouldn't we share our research? Why wouldn't we export at least some of our excess medical equipment, assuming that we have any? That's what aid on the global stage should be. I'll help you, but I'm keeping my eyes open. I'm handling my own affairs first. It's not this ideological, ever closer union open borders were all the same nonsense, because that's just a house made out of tissue paper. It's nonsense that just crumples in the slightest provocation. In an emergency, you can really tell who's going to be the coward. The one that screams everyone for themselves. The one that stampedes in a crowded theater, or stabs people in the back when all hell breaks loose. Those people are identified very easily. Just watch them when there's no crisis, in a time of plenty. If they're acting like there's nothing to prepare for, like the future isn't potentially dangerous, if they lounge around and look at you strangely while you get your ducks in a row, they are exactly the type of people to become unhinged once a storm comes. And this doesn't just apply to people, it applies to nations. The arrogance of places like China, or even the EU, that was a luxury, and you can tell by their recent behaviors that that luxury has run out.